Okay, we are live. I'm going to wait for confirmation that the attendees can see us, and then we can start at 1:30. People are starting to join. Were you able to see any of the early videos or anything yet? Or are you just coming in for the first time?
I'll come straight in.
Yeah. I'll send you the link. You can go back to this event platform actually and check out any of the recorded sessions at your convenience at any time.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
There's some good content out there. Right. So 1:30. I just want to get validation from our team that we are indeed visible, and they have not confirmed that yet. So who's in charge of this one? We are broadcasting. Let's see. Can you see my chat in the window to the right?
I can.
Okay, good.
It is always worth double checking, isn't
Yeah.
it? That people can
We
see
actually
and
had
hear.
sort of internal assigned people for each session to just give us a good to go. There she is. Hey, thank you, Carrie. All right, so we will kick off our afternoon breakout session. We have 3 running simultaneously, so lots of great content today. I'm really happy to welcome Gareth Smith, who is the Chief Technology Officer at Eggplant today. So he's going to share with us some of the features and functions that are on the roadmap for their healthcare line of product. And real quickly, just to repeat what we covered in the intro earlier today with Anthony, use your chat window to ask questions. Gareth will answer the questions near the end of the session. If you need to expand his screen, use the maximize button there in the left-hand corner, just to the left of the PowerPoint. And if you want to see the other presentations that you might be missing today during this 3 breakout session track, you can always come back to the site and look at the recordings. So with that, Gareth, welcome. Thank you so very much for joining us today, and I will hand it off to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. So good afternoon, morning, and evening, folks. So what I'm going to talk around today is both the approach to how Eggplant looks at a roadmap, but also our findings and why we build out a roadmap in the way that we do it. I thought to do that rather than simply have a presentation of what is just a roadmap, which largely is a Gantt chart for project, which I thought was a bit dry and a bit boring. So in our customers and the way that we talk to customers and customers use our technology, there are clearly, for the different industries we look at, specifically in healthcare, there clearly is some very obvious, clear challenges with software when it doesn't go correctly. So one of our strap lines is that we're ridding the world of bad software, and the question comes up is what does bad software mean? And it means software that doesn't work as well as it behaves. Any one software system can be very complex. You interlink many different systems that you find in any hospital or any other industry for that matter. You have a whole variant of different options and opportunities for going wrong. Some examples, you can say there's many examples, and you will folks will know these as well as I do, where you have some glitches in any one system that can actually put a patient at risk. So anything in healthcare has a real patient critical element to it. And then during our conversation with our customers and finding out how they use our technology and so on, then we found 3 areas that are real problem areas for those customers to deal with. And this is how I'm going to talk about how our technology addresses them, and then how we make sure our roadmap tries to address these elements. The first one is around delivering a robust digital experience. So a digital experience really is anything where we think about how the end user will use that system. What is the user experience of that? And the reason that that's really important is that you look at any hospital or any other use case, you would use a lot of manual testers. And the reason that people use manual testers is that because manual testers are 2 things. One, intelligent, and they're able to look at something and know whether something looks wrong. You don't have to define wrong in some predefined way. You can use the brain of the human to look at whether it's wrong or not. The other element is that human has some domain knowledge. And so anyone who's interested or knows or has a background in any hospital systems would know that a particular value on the screen, for example, maybe a blood pressure value or something like that, looks incorrect. Whereas anyone without that domain knowledge would say, oh, that's a number, that's fine. 45,000, that's absolutely normal for a pulse. Whereas anyone with any even limited healthcare knowledge would know that that was wrong. And so how do we deliver then those robust experiences? The second element is how do we do that efficiently, and how do we do that at scale? Because what we have, and we find in any system, say hospital systems, we have multiple different systems and services, and these are updated continuously and independently from one another. So I have to be very careful and make sure a rollout to one of my EMR systems also doesn't impact some codes. I have some other, room booking system or something like that. So I have a scaling problem, and how do I make sure I test all those things continuously to support the needs of the hospital or the system. And then the third one is around how do I manage the complexity and cost of those different systems, because that I'm testing across legacy, older systems, different types of Windows, maybe Linux, mobile devices. And in some cases, then in different elements of healthcare, I need to connect to different devices. I have a different patient monitoring system. So I have the full gamut of platforms for mobile, desktop, as well as devices to care about. And how do I make sure I deal with all that all in one go? I thought as the next step, it would be useful to cover some of the different types of use cases that we come across in healthcare. I've picked out 5 here. Obviously, different customers use different spreads of different elements in here. The first one is around testing configuration and workflows in hospitals. We used in a number of major hospitals throughout the US and Europe. And you can see some of the examples in here. And I'll pull back on this a little bit towards the end of the presentation to go through some of these in a bit more detail. But this is making sure that all the different package application systems I have within the hospital all work as expected. And as I mentioned at the beginning, even testing one individual system can have hundreds and thousands of different combinations, but making sure they all work together is a very different problem. So how do we solve that issue? The second types of use case is that our customers are building software for use in healthcare systems. So these are folks who use and build EMR systems, electronic medical record systems, as you know, and so on. So that's more of a DevOps element, and it's more about focusing at the end user system they're providing works in and of itself. So if I enter some value into some form, then that value actually goes into that system of record. And then when it's rendered in some other display, then the value is still actually the same value in there. There's no rounding error or anything like that. The third category of organizations we speak to are those making and manufacturing actual medical devices. So you can see different CAT scanners here, as well as radiation devices. And the important part there is making sure that not only does the software work, and then ensuring that the device works as expected, but linking in with some of the hardware sensors to making sure that the values, also the dosages rendered there, are exactly what we're expecting. And then the other use case we have here is then, because you're presenting a interactive screen to a patient and or a clinician of some form, then we can test all different types of combinations in there, and we can make sure, and we look for those edge cases where if I press this and it's a Tuesday and it's raining and so on, then I can't incur an additional overdose or an erroneous overdose through there. So looking at how do we intelligently explore the system to make sure it's robust and secure as we can be. The next use case is around robotic process automation. From our perspective, robotic process automation is really the same thing as we're doing for test automation, but we're doing it for the purposes of actually running that process. And so we have examples where we can automate, because we can automate those different systems, you can saw in the first column there, then we can automate systems such as rebooking a whole clinician's time if they've had to move to a different hospital. So how do we rebook all those patients and all the rooms? And we have a number of use cases we're doing that for some customers. That saves an awful lot of time. It's like days, if not weeks of time of rebooking in the case of where a clinician or a room needs to be changed and rebooked. And what the net effect of that is that we can automate the whole process. It is secure and safe and robust, but it frees up those administrative folks who would normally do the rebooking to actually focus on patient care. So it's a real win-win. And the final element is around the other end of testing. So I've built my application, I've built the system, I've integrated it, make sure it works. Now, how do I make sure it continually works? I've got no new updates to test. It's all solid. How do we make sure it's continually available and working as expected? I'm moving away from the servers up, really who cares, but can and does it work as expected? So different types of use cases. And then before we go on to the roadmap, I thought I would show you a little bit about how we work. And I think that is useful background to know the different elements and focus we apply on our roadmap itself. Again, you can see the three elements I began with and how our technology maps to them. The first one is how do we deliver robust digital experiences? That is, as I mentioned at the beginning, it is if we are testing these things for the purposes of end humans or end users and humans to do that, then we need to make sure we're testing the user experience. We can use things like APIs and database values and so on to make sure those values are correct, but really nothing really substitutes looking and evaluating it as a human would. So we test the full user experience. That is functional testing, sure, performance testing, and performance testing is both performance regression testing to make sure things load in a timely manner, but also load testing. If we do have a spike where we need to enter a bunch of things at the same sort of time, can the system cope with that? Then usability testing. Usability testing is really important, especially in times of stress, to make sure I don't have two buttons too close to each other. I have color contrast. That doesn't give me eye fatigue if I'm using a screen for a long period of time. Accessibility testing goes beyond that then to make sure you're hitting regulatory guidelines with the user interface. So we look at all those elements and we mimic a full synthetic user looking at our system. The second part of it then is that's all very well and we can test and automate those systems, but how do we do that? Because all the different scope of different types of tests that I can run here is enormous. In order to do that, then we're leveraging both a mechanism we refer to as a digital twin. It's a representation of all the different test combinations. It's a very simple model. You don't encode in it all the different types of things that can happen. Instead, that's implicitly defined. So it's a very simple, you say, here is a screen I'm on, here are things you can do, that's it. That generates way too many tests to run. And that's when we rely on the AI engine that sits underneath it that picks the next best test case. It uses lots of different AI algorithms all grouped into an ensemble, really all hidden from the use of our customers. It just happens under the hood. But we have those different algorithms that work out what's the next best test to give us a balance between making sure we got some good test coverage, but also if we have some real insights and nuggets where there are problems, how can we focus on those defects? And then finally, our Universal Fusion engine allows us to connect to one and any platform. So we can automate anything and everything with the same piece of technology, whether it's a packaged application, a device, a mobile application, or so on. So that's how we do it. And in a very quick nutshell, a brief set of videos that show you how we do it. You can see on both the main screens there is a digital twin or a model that represents the different types of test combinations that we want to explore. Underneath that is the AI engine selecting the different types of test combinations, as well as the Fusion engine that's interacting with, on the left-hand side, an EMR system, on the right-hand side, a ultrasound visualization system, and interacting with it. So that gives you an indication of the ability to really interact with systems as a human would, whether they are form-based or rich graphical systems. So that's a background to Eggplant and how we address problems for our customers. So that was a useful background before we go into, okay, so this presentation is about roadmap. What does it look like? And how do we do it? And I thought how do we build the roadmap? What's our strategy for building out product enhancements with our engineering teams would be an interesting thing to talk about. Our approach is reasonably straightforward. We go from our vision. So the Eggplant vision is an intelligent automation platform, and we make that available in the cloud and on premises. We automate as much as possible, but we also provide capabilities for our customers to detune any of that automation. So it's a flexible platform. And that defines really our longer vision. Then behind that and sits underneath that is a set of strategies. And this is what I'm going to go into a little bit more detail here. So the strategies define how we spend our engineering dollars, how we're going to invest our engineering time in order to deliver and build out our vision. And then what comes out of that is a set of actual pieces of work that we would give to the engineering team in the form of epics. These are then user stories or definitions of enhancements to the product, or maybe sometimes new elements of a product that we want the engineering team to build on. We then speak directly to customers, me and most folks within Eggplant, certainly on the product management team. They speak to customers. We have surveys that we submit twice a year. We have advisory boards. We also speak to analysts and so on. So a wide range of stakeholders we speak to make sure our strategy and the prioritization of our roadmap addresses the needs of our customers. The other thing that we do is somewhat unusual, is that we also have a set of accelerators, and accelerators are a set of capabilities that we build out. We have a dedicated team building them out. Sometimes we work with partners to build out the accelerators. And these are elements that sit on top of the Eggplant technology platform, and they deliver new types of use cases. So sometimes we build these accelerators to prototype something and get some early customer feedback. Sometimes they deliver integration pieces that we need to get out quickly to some of our customers. We make all these publicly available. And there's a new one we launched last week that I want to talk through at the end of this presentation. So that's the process. Now go straight into the strategic themes. There are 9 in here, and that's where I'm going to go through most of these through the time we've got left in this presentation. And you can see there the different elements that we focus on. So if I go through these, you can see the different types of projects we work on under each of these strategic themes. And as I said at the beginning, if we look at a piece of technology or a project we could work on that doesn't fit into these themes, then we question whether we do that at all. And if we do it, then we need to consider how we change and we swap out one of those strategies. And it all keeps us sane, and it keeps us moving towards delivering our vision and addressing the needs of our customers rather than just ad hoc, running and building roadmaps without any actual direction. So if we look into some of these in a bit more detail, this actually is our #1 feature request from the advisory boards we've had from customers as well as our surveys. So this is the intelligent creation and also automatic maintenance of test assets. And because of the way that Eggplant works, once we have the Eggplant test assets, then not only can I define my defined fixed test cases I want to run, but also we can auto-generate those test cases automatically, as you saw earlier. So once I've got the assets, then I'm good to go. And there's a lot of work already gone on in here, and you can see the graphic on the left-hand side. We're already able to identify interesting areas on a screen. We can then, with a deep learning model, that we trained is able to identify interesting and classify different areas that have been identified, such as a button or a text field or so on. And then from there, we're able to generate all the assets and the scripts we need to automate that. And as we go through our roadmap, we're looking at screen type classification. Well, before we got to screen type classification, we moved on to auto asset maintenance. And at the bottom, you can see how we've been able to provide a range of self-healing capabilities and be robust against underlying SUT changes or application or system changes without the need to modify any of the assets on the Eggplant side. So we move for things like OCR, which obviously means you can change language, you can change font, and it's still robust. A big improvement last year on our image analysis technology in our computer vision system. In August this year, we released the guided maintenance, which is that video you can see on the left-hand side. This, after a test run, if it detects something on the screen and it says this actually would fail the test, but for what you're looking at, I found it here. If I made some changes to the image, then I think this is what you're looking for. And then you can have those in a very simple report, and you can see through. I can go left, right, next. I can accept any of those changes. And the next release we have for this is the end of this month, is where we're automatically being able to make those changes. So now we can identify the areas, we know what the changes we want to make, and then our next release for this is where we can automatically make those changes. And it's using a set of underlying capabilities in the product to be able to be confident that we're making those changes. That's all configurable, but the auto asset maintenance is a big customer request. Then we look at automating everything and complex end-to-end processes. As I mentioned, we have for many years been able to connect to any system, and it's very comforting to go to a customer when they say, can you connect to this? The answer is yes, before they've really specified what they want to connect to. But different areas we've worked on and continue to work on. At the top there, smart cards for increased security. That's something we've been working on for the last year or so, and started in defense and in financial services, but also healthcare. This is where you need to test those systems, but they are secured behind a smart card system, and we make that transparent. Upcoming towards the end of the year, a lot of healthcare systems use Citrix, and right now using our technology to test Citrix systems, you need the Citrix viewer, and we connect Eggplant to that Citrix viewer, but actually we'll have a native Citrix connection into the product, and that takes that additional hop out, which I think makes the whole thing simpler. We have some healthcare specific protocols for load testing coming up for things like HL7. And with our recent acquisition by Keysight, they have an awful lot of hardware monitoring systems. So that gives us a richer view into any hardware and device systems where we're able to actually close that loop and link in the hardware test and monitoring world in with the software test and monitor world. Then we look at another strategy of making sure we can operate as a human would, and what does that mean? And as we saw on the previous slide, it is looking at functional performance and usability testing, and we do that through looking at it through the human would and interacting with it. We do have some customers that come up to us with a bundle of HDMI or VGA cables and say, can you test what comes out of that? And yes, absolutely we can. That's an important part of what we do. So controlling and understanding those systems, but that doesn't mean to say we're only looking at it through the user interface. I think we're at a loss if we only do that. So we can also connect on APIs, databases, and systems. So an important use case is to make sure that what is shown to the user actually is in the system record. So the insulin pump says 5 mil, then we need to make sure that it's shown on the screen as 5 mil, and that's all delivered. So we test the whole vertical stack, not just what's on the interface, but it is important we show what is on screen. The areas we're working on in here is our continually improved OCR engine. We continue to improve this year on year with some interesting machine vision and machine learning technologies we're going to embed into our product for the OCR element. We are moving our computer vision service from our Fusion engine into a separate component, and that gives us a sense of a more scalable and different capabilities we can add on there. Again, investing in the same element that we've got, but improving that part of it, and also extending our one-click usability and accessibility testing. So what I really like about usability testing right now is that it requires no expertise. We simply tell you where there are usability problems, and extending out those libraries to do further and more capabilities without any insight or without any input from the user. So that's really looking at the Fusion engine and the core interaction with the system as under test. Now we look at how do we generate those test cases. And if we pick out, this is a simple representation of a digital twin. So this may be some, say, a generic hospital system here where I have registration, a procedure, some analysis, and then whatever the next steps are. And you can see those gray boxes. They represent actions, all the things that could happen within those systems. Now, if we think about this in the real world, and represented it here with those different colored boxes, that sort of represents what could happen. So I'm registering a patient, what type of patient I got. I can have age, I can have gender, I can have locale, I can have pre-existing conditions. I've got all those different elements in there. So I've got all those things. When I have their vitals, I can then, what are their vitals? So I've got different combinations. You can see through this whole system, I have one test case of registering a patient. They go through the labs, through all the SOAP notes, procedure, lab tests, and so on. Then we discharge them. I've got one test. What's the next test look like? And I've got all that different variants. And in here, even in this simple example, I actually counted up and multiplied together. It's something like 70 billion different combinations that are possible in here. And obviously, right, too many for us to run. So how do we make sure we've got the next best test? And that's where the AI engine comes in and then generates that next best test for us. You can see the roadmap we've got for this. We started off with fixed regression packs. You put those in. We added then coverage to make sure we got coverage. The bug hunting allows us to focus on patterns and areas where we've seen failures before, and we want to identify other areas where there are failures and pick those out. And the real user journeys allows us in some systems where we are able to track automatically how customers and users or patients and clinicians are using systems to feed that in. So we focus testing on the areas that are used. And obviously you can enter those manual if you're unable to get those into the system automatically. So at least you know what the common flows are. And then finally, the area we're working on right now is an enhancement of the smaller changes between an individual test. And we're looking at genetic tuning algorithms that are very quick at searching through smaller pockets of search space for us. So that's be another algorithm we'll add into our system, largely transparent from our customer's perspective, other than we're improving and continue to improve the algorithms that sit underneath it. Another area that's super important for us is how do we get, we've got the raw data, but how do we get the value of that testing to our customers? And we provide that through APIs, so we can integrate. There's a whole wide range of integrating our technology in different systems, super important. We have a whole range of analytics and how we do that, but also visualization. So you can see some of the visualizations we are added and adding into the product. Some of these are available actually today as accelerators. You can see that blue and gray boxes. That's a test case rendering. So we continue to look at test case oriented views, even though we have a model-based system in there to present the reporting to our customers. The piece in the middle with a large donut is a gherkin report. So even though you can write gherkin features as the test definitions in Eggplant, but if you go for just the model approach, and that's using our AI engine to do the testing for you, we can make it look like a gherkin report. And use that so you can check the Eggplant testing in the combination with any other test framework. And enhancements are here looking at video. We think very carefully about how we interface and test any of the system. And as part of capturing that and looking at test failures, so certainly we can capture screenshots, we can capture video, but we're looking at enhancing that. So we're looking at changing our codec to sit in the MP4 framework, and looking at some high resolution elements and so on. And then finally, the other part we're looking at is that we have lots of analysis that allow you to identify the root cause, obviously a deep AI engine that does that for us, but providing a clustering technology where we can look for the root cause analysis. So we can look at many failures. The bug hunting will do the clustering for us at that level. How can we aggregate those different clusters? They're slightly different, but how can we underpin that and detect the root cause in a visualization so we can target those directly? And a big piece here on usability, and you can see the timeline. We have been working on this for some time. We'll continue to work on it into next year, and then providing a modern, consistent, comprehensive graphical set of tooling for the whole Eggplant technology stack, driven by our usability and user experience design team, providing a consistent element. And we're looking at this for both. We continue to provide our tooling for both technical as well as business users. The huge advantages to bringing non-technical users into the foray of being able to define the areas and the types of things that need to be tested. As I mentioned, you have all that domain knowledge, so let's exploit that. And then on our instantly scalable cloud platform, there's somewhat of a misnomer because it sounds like it's only for the cloud, but actually it's not. It is two parts of it. One is in the way that we deploy our technology. I'm not going to go through that cloud architecture diagram. The important part here is that we are moving our technology into something called the containerized environment, and we use some technologies such as Kubernetes and so on. The bottom line is we have one consistent way of deploying our technology. Deploying it through containers gets you a whole bunch of additional capabilities for scaling, robustness, and so on. That is what we are building out from our product team, and we're delivering that to the Eggplant Cloud team for them to host Eggplant in the cloud. But we're also making that platform in the form of containers available to our customers directly. So it's a modern way to consume server-oriented technology. Now, for those customers that I was using our desktop environment, that continues to be the same. But this is an increasingly popular way to consume technology because of all the advantages. So that's our product strategies. The last element I've got that I did want to bring up, and I mentioned earlier, is part of the accelerators. We have different types of accelerators. This one is a healthcare-specific accelerator on our site, and you can see the URL at the top if you go to eggplantsoftware.com and look at resources. This is a set of models. So we have hundreds of different predefined common use cases across hospital systems. You can see the different classifications in the large blue boxes there for transfer patients, a day patient life cycle, pathology, and under pathology, we've got things like room for a patient, place new orders, close the encounter, enter a diagnosis, and so on. And the left-hand side, you see some of the screenshots of what they look like as digital twins on our models. And these define our best practice definitions of what it's like and the processes you need to do in order to do that. And you can obviously look at those, document them, use it as a documentation system, but the purpose here is to use them for automated testing. And it's a way of bootstrapping those and going quickly with the Eggplant technology. So that's check that out. That's on our accelerator website. And the final slide I got is actually the roadmap. I thought I couldn't really have a roadmap presentation without actually having at least a roadmap on there. It gives you a very high level view. There's obviously lots of details we are adding into our product over the next year or so. But these, just picking out some of the highlights, we release an update quarterly. You can see it's we're talking about DAI here, which includes the elements of the Fusion engine in it that we saw earlier, as well as the AI engine. We've completed the outer box, the self-healing test that I mentioned earlier, that's coming at the end of this month. And at the end of this year, additional analytics that all look at how can we improve the testing and the QA process. Then we release our new graphical tooling for our modeler, moving it on to more of the automation by screen types, the defect root cause classification element towards the middle and end of next year. And then that's when we will add in our genetic tuning for the enhancement of the AI engine. So I whistle-stop tour through the Eggplant strategy and roadmap. I will end that there. I'm happy to take any questions.
Can you see the questions in the chat box, Gareth?
I can.
There's one from the thrower that asks if you do we know if they integrate with NetSmart? I'm assuming that's Eggplant.
I guess that there are two interpretations of that question. One is, do we integrate with it for the purposes of automating it? In the answer would be yes, in the way that we'd be able to automate anything. The second one is, do we integrate it such that we're able to use NetStart to initiate some testing or Eggplant or get some results back. That doesn't ring a bell for where we have to, and that doesn't mean we haven't done it. But the important part of it is that we have our API, the Eggplant API, that allows us to integrate with any system. From a technology perspective, we've written the technology such that we have a runtime. The runtime has an API associated with it, and then any user interface technology we have uses that same API. And so in the same way that I can manually define a test and run a test through the user interface, we have the API to do that. So that's what we use to build our integration pieces. And so it's a well-documented API. So it makes it very straightforward to integrate with things like NetStart if we haven't done that already.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Gareth? We've got quite a lot of people on the line. Now's your chance. That's what she needed to know. Anyone else?
Always happy to follow up with any questions after these sorts of calls. I often find that during a call like this, then sometimes there's a flood of questions, sometimes there are, but either way, there's one thing that I thought of, and it's 10 minutes later or so. So happy to follow up with these questions afterwards.
Well, if it's okay with you, for those people who ask, I will share your contact information with them. Is that?
Yep, absolutely. Yep, that's fine.
Right. Well, with that, with no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up this session. And thank you again, Gareth, for your time. It was really fascinating to see what's on the horizon and learn about what Eggplant has in mind for healthcare. So we're looking forward to that. And for the folks on the line, we will just drop off and meet back up for the second round of breakouts that start at 2:15. Oh, wait, we have a late addition here. Does Eggplant ever have any thoughts to create its own data management system from Tyler Steele?
So the question is data, and can I infer from that you mean data-driven testing as a greater focus? I presume that's the answer, the question in there. If that is the answer, then yes. So we do have data generators built into the model already. But we want to make sure that our enhancements to data modeling work. That is another accelerator we've delivered. It's on our accelerator website that you can download and use. That accelerator allows you to define a data model of yourself. In essence, it will be a spreadsheet of different combinations, and you can use that to feed in different test cases within Eggplant. So that's the approach we've got today. It's a very simple mechanism, and it's very flexible because it allows you to define a spreadsheet. Each row becomes a data set for the test you've got, and then that can be, for many of our customers, they use that to auto generate a table or a spreadsheet. This accelerator then will load up that spreadsheet. You can say, I want to run all these test cases with that model, and it does an N by M and runs all those test cases across each of those rows and iterates through it and does it for you automatically. So I would encourage you to try that and drop me feedback for how you think about that. So we are wanting to make sure we get the data modeling correct, but it is an important element. There's a lot of flow-oriented tooling we have, and we're looking at how do we bolster the data-driven part of it. The data-driven part of it does go into the AI engine. Obviously, the flow is much easier to visualize, but the data and the flows both go into the AI engine to decide what to do next. And it's more about an integration with the data part of it. So yes, is the short answer to your question. We do have an accelerator that does the better data integration today for large data sets. And I'd love to hear any feedback you have for how you would see that change in the future.
Great. Any other questions? Give it a minute. There's a bit of a delay, I think, in our broadcast.
As I said, I'm happy to take any other thoughts or suggestions that folks have. Is that such as the data part of it. There's lots I haven't covered in here. Lots we're doing on the research part of it. Lots we're doing on the the more detailed product roadmap. Obviously, the one slide we have is very, very abstract, very high level, but it gives you a flavor for the sorts of things we're doing. Sometimes they're very small elements. Sometimes what I find it with customers is, oh, I'd love it if you did this, and well, it already does that. And so anyone who's an Eggplant customer and user have anything that they wanted to pass my way, then please feel free to do so.
Great. Well, thanks for being available and for joining us today. Quite a treat. So especially since you're calling in later in the afternoon from across the water there. So we are grateful for your participation, Gareth. Really great to see you. And we will catch up soon.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you in a bit. Next round of breakout starts at 2 o'clock, 2:15.